Your college fund is gone, sweetheart. We lost everything, my parents told me, their voices heavy with what I thought was sorrow. But then, just days later, I overheard them, barely bothering to whisper, bragging to my brother about his fully funded startup, paid for with my tuition money. What they didn't know was that I was already moving my own pieces, making plans they couldn't possibly imagine. It all started with a promise, a dream, and a shocking betrayal that ripped my world apart. I'm Mackenzie, and I was just 22 when I learned the hard way that sometimes the very people who are supposed to lift you up can be the ones to knock you down the hardest. But what they didn't realize was that their betrayal would become the fuel for my greatest triumph. Growing up in suburban Boston, I was the quintessential good kid. While others were out playing, I was meticulously organizing my crayons by color or studying late into the night. My parents, Robert and Diana, beamed with pride, constantly telling me how I was going to change the world. They even started a college fund for me when I was 7, showing me the special folder with statements promising me the sky was the limit. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, anywhere I wanted. That promise was my North Star. I built my entire life around it, from debate team captain to science fair winner, all while maintaining a perfect 4.0 GPA. That fund wasn't just money. It was tangible proof of their belief in me, that all my hard work would pay off. Then there was my brother, Nathan. 3 years younger, he was my opposite. Spontaneous, reckless, and always improvising. My parents absolutely adored him for it. Nathan's just so full of life. Mom would gush, even when he brought home a mediocre report card. While I worked tirelessly for everything, they constantly bailed him out. Total his car? Here's a new, better one. Failed a class? Mom would spend weeks negotiating with teachers. But when I got my first A in AP chemistry, the question was, did you not study enough, Mackenzie? Still, I never doubted their love. I just assumed they had different expectations for us. They showed up for my competitions, hung every award on the wall, and most importantly, kept contributing to that college fund. My senior year, my sights were set on Yale. Their biochemistry program was perfect, aligning with my passion for enzyme catalysis. I applied early decision, poured my soul into essays, and aced the interview. The day the acceptance letter arrived, I screamed so loud our neighbor called to check on us. My parents took me to the fanciest restaurant. Mom, teary-eyed, toasted, "Y'all won't know what hit them." That night, Dad told me the fund had $150,000. Not enough to cover everything, but enough to make Yale feasible with scholarships and a part-time job. I was ecstatic, spending the next few months lost in a blissful haze of dorm preferences, roommate emails, and student organizations. Even Nathan, who decided to take a gap year, seemed happy for me. Looking back, I should have seen the signs. Mom would change the subject when I brought up my class schedule. Hushed conversations would stop dead when I walked in. Nathan and Dad were having more and more business discussions behind closed doors. But I was too caught up in my dreams, too trusting, too naive to imagine the people who had encouraged me for so long would plot to undermine everything just as it was coming true. 2 weeks before move-in day, everything shattered. Family meeting in the living room. Dad's voice boomed up the stairs. His tone was grave, but I figured it was just logistics for the drive. When I came down, Mom was rigid on the sofa, hands clasped. Dad stood by the fireplace, arms crossed. Nathan slouched, scrolling on his phone. "Put the phone down, Nathan. This is serious," Dad said. Nathan rolled his eyes but complied. "What's going on? Is everyone okay?" I asked, a flutter of anxiety rising. Mom and Dad exchanged a look I couldn't decipher. Dad cleared his throat. "Mackenzie, honey, there's no easy way to say this. There's been a situation with your college fund." The room tilted. What kind of situation? "We lost it," Mom blurted out, her voice cracking. "We lost everything, honey." My mind went blank. Lost? What do you mean lost? Like the bank made an error? Dad shook his head slowly. No, it wasn't an error. About 8 months ago, I was approached about an investment opportunity. A sure thing, or so I thought. A chance to significantly increase your college fund before you started at Yale. I told him it was risky, Mom interjected, shooting Dad an accusatory glance. But he was convinced it was a real estate development, Dad continued. A commercial property downtown. All the projections looked incredible. Double-digit returns within months. The developer had a track record of success. I struggled to process. So what happened? The developer took the money and disappeared, Dad said, spreading his hands helplessly, along with investments from dozens of other people. The authorities are investigating, but the money's gone. Mackenzie, your college fund, it's empty. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. All of it? The entire $150,000? Mom nodded, dabbing at her eyes. We're so sorry, sweetie. We were just trying to make things better for you. I looked at Nathan, who was studying his fingernails with unusual intensity. His lack of surprise was my first red flag. When did you find out it was gone? I fought to keep my voice steady. About 3 weeks ago, Dad answered. We've been sick about it, trying to figure out what to tell you, how to fix this. 3 weeks, I repeated. And you're just telling me now? 2 weeks before I'm supposed to move to New Haven. We kept hoping for a miracle, Mom said weakly, that the authorities would find the money, or the school would offer more financial aid. My mind raced, instantly shifting into problem-solving mode. Okay, so we'll need to look at additional loans. I can increase my work-study hours, maybe find an off-campus job sophomore year. Mackenzie, Dad interrupted. Yale isn't going to happen. Not now. I stared at him in disbelief. What are you talking about? Of course it's going to happen. I'll figure it out. Honey, Mom said gently, even with loans, the cost is prohibitive. We're talking about nearly $80,000 a year. I have scholarships, I argued, and I can apply for more. There are private loans. Which would leave you hundreds of thousands in debt, Dad cut in. Be reasonable, Mackenzie. There are other options. Massachusetts State has a good science program, or you could do 2 years at community college and transfer. Save money while living at home. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After all those years of promises, all that work, they were suggesting I give up Yale 2 weeks before move-in day. This can't be happening, I whispered, more to myself than to them. Nathan finally spoke up. It's just a school, Mac, not the end of the world. I shot him a look that could have frozen fire. Easy for you to say. You don't even want to go to college. That's not fair, Mom said. Your brother has different aspirations. Apparently his aspirations get funded no matter what, I snapped, noticing the new gaming setup in the corner of the room that definitely hadn't been there last week. Dad's expression hardened. That's enough, Mackenzie. We're all upset, but there's no need for that tone. We're trying to be practical here. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to calm down. Arguing wouldn't solve anything. I need some time, I said finally. I need to figure this out. Of course, Mom nodded, relieved. Take all the time you need. Just be realistic, okay? I spent that night wide awake, researching every possible financial option. I emailed Yale's financial aid office, applied for every last-minute scholarship, and calculated budgets based on different loan amounts and work hours. By morning, I had a plan. It wasn't perfect, but I would still go to Yale. It would just be a very different experience. Maximum loans, maximum work study, a part-time job on weekends, no spring break trips, no eating out, no new clothes. Years of extreme frugality. The financial aid officer was sympathetic, but limited. They increased my scholarship slightly, but it wasn't nearly enough. My parents' reaction to my determination was strange. Instead of being proud, they seemed almost annoyed, disappointed that I hadn't simply accepted their suggestion to abandon my dream. You're being stubborn, Dad said when I showed him my revised plan. This is exactly the kind of impulsive decision that leads young people into crippling debt. coming from the man who had supposedly lost my entire college fund in an impulsive investment. The irony was rich. 2 weeks later, Mom and Dad drove me to Yale with significantly less enthusiasm than I'd anticipated. My dorm room, which I'd imagined decorating with their help amidst tears and proud smiles, was set up in tense silence. They left earlier than most parents, leaving me alone with my second-hand textbooks and the cheapest meal plan. That first semester was grueling. While my classmates were joining clubs and attending social events, I was working in the dining hall, the library, and as a tutor to make ends meet. I skipped meals, walked everywhere. My roommate, Sophie, daughter of a hedge fund manager, watched my frugal lifestyle with a mixture of curiosity and pity. "You know," she said one night as I calculated if I could afford laundry, "my dad always says, you can't earn your way out of a financial hole with minimum wage jobs. You need to think bigger." I was too exhausted to appreciate her advice then, but those words would come back to me. Despite the financial stress, I excelled academically. My professors noticed. In my biochemistry class, Professor Wilson specifically commented on my innovative approach. "You have a unique mind, Mackenzie," she told me. "You don't just memorize the material, you engage with it, question it, improve upon it." Her words were a balm to my battered self-esteem. At least here, in this academic sanctuary, my value was recognized. If only my family could see me the same way. As Christmas break approached, I faced it with dread. I'd been too busy working to process the full extent of my parents' betrayal. But now, heading home for 3 weeks, I would have to face them again. Little did I know, the worst betrayal was yet to be revealed. When Dad picked me up from the train station, the first thing I noticed was his new watch. Nothing flashy, but definitely an upgrade. The second was the brand new SUV replacing his old sedan. "Nice car," I commented, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Oh, about a month ago," he replied casually. "The old one was giving me trouble. Sometimes you have to invest in reliability." Invest. An interesting choice of words from someone who had supposedly lost every penny of my college fund in a bad investment. At home, the evidence of financial hardship was conspicuously absent. New furniture, a larger TV, Mom's new haircut, and highlights. Small changes that individually might mean nothing, but collectively painted a picture of a family far from struggling. Then there was Nathan's room. Where once there had been a basic desk, there was now a complete home office setup. Dual monitors, ergonomic chair, the latest MacBook Pro, a whiteboard covered in business plans. Nathan's really gotten serious about his future, Mom explained when she caught me staring. He's developing a tech startup. Very promising. "Really?" I replied. "That's a lot of equipment for someone who was just finding himself a few months ago." She laughed nervously. "Well, you know your brother. When he gets passionate about something, he goes all in." All in with what money? But I didn't ask. Not yet. I needed more information. That night, I lay awake, listening to muffled conversations downstairs around midnight. Sure, everyone thought I was asleep. I crept to the top of the stairs. "She seems to be doing fine," I heard Dad say. "A little thinner, maybe, but that's probably the dining hall food." "Do you think she suspects anything?" That was Mom, her voice tense. "Why would she? As far as she knows, we're victims, too. Besides, she's too busy with her precious Yale to pay attention to what's happening here." There was the sound of ice clinking. Then Nathan's voice. "When are we going to tell her about Digital Apex?" "She's going to find out eventually." Digital Apex? I'd never heard that name before. "We'll tell her when there's something to tell," Dad replied. "Once you're profitable, she'll understand why we made the decision we did. She's smart enough to recognize a good investment when she sees one." Mom made a sound of agreement. "Exactly. What good is an Ivy League education in today's economy, anyway? Nathan's building something real, something tangible. In 5 years, he could be the next Mark Zuckerberg, and then we can pay for Mackenzie's student loans 10 times over," Nathan added, sounding pleased. "She'll thank us then." I gripped the banister, so hard my knuckles turned white. They hadn't lost my college fund in a bad investment. They had deliberately taken it to fund Nathan's startup. They had lied to my face, watched me scramble, see me off to a life of financial stress, all while secretly believing they'd made the right choice to prioritize Nathan's business idea over my education. "I still think we should have told her the truth," Nathan said, surprising me slightly. "She's going to be really angry when she finds out." "What's she going to do?" Dad scoffed. "Sue us? The money was in our names, legally. Besides, she's always been the sensible one. Once Digital Apex takes off, she'll see this was the smart play. Education is overrated in the digital age. Look at all the college dropouts who become billionaires." "Robert's right," Mom chimed in. "Nathan, you have a real gift for business. Mackenzie has book smarts, different kinds of intelligence. We're just investing where we'll see the biggest return." I'd heard enough. I crept back to my room, heart pounding with rage and betrayal. The pieces were fitting together now. The new possessions, the lack of guilt, the dismissal of my academic achievements as mere book smarts. In that moment, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront them. Not yet. Knowledge was power, and I needed more of both. The next morning, I casually asked Nathan about his new computer equipment. "Looks like you've got quite the setup there. What are you working on?" He hesitated, glancing toward the kitchen. "Just some app development stuff. Nothing solid yet." "That's cool," I said, feigning genuine interest. "What kind of app?" Nathan's face lit up. Like most people with an idea they think is brilliant, he couldn't resist talking about it. "It's called Digital Apex, a revolutionary social media platform for entrepreneurs and investors to connect. Kind of like LinkedIn meets Shark Tank." "Sounds interesting," I nodded. "How far along are you?" "We've got the basic platform architecture mapped out. I'm working with a developer in India to build the MVP. Should be ready for beta testing in a few months." I asked innocently. "Me and this guy I met during my gap year travels. He's the tech guy. I'm the vision guy." Nathan puffed up slightly. "We're going to revolutionize how startups get funded." Over the next few days, I conducted a stealth investigation. When no one was home, I searched for any documents related to Digital Apex. In Dad's home office, I found a folder labeled DA Investment containing bank statements showing multiple transfers from an account I recognized, my college fund account, to a new business account named Digital Apex LLC. I took photos of everything. I recorded a subsequent conversation where my parents and Nathan discussed the business. I saved emails I found on our shared family computer where Dad explicitly referred to using Mackenzie's college money because she can take out loans like everyone else. I compiled all this evidence meticulously, not yet sure how I would use it, but certain that I would need it someday. I also reached out to a legal aid service at Yale to understand my options. What I learned wasn't encouraging. Since the account was in my parents' names legally, I had limited recourse unless I could prove the money had been explicitly designated for my education in some binding way. By the time I returned to Yale for the spring semester, I had a comprehensive understanding of my parents' betrayal and a simmering determination to somehow make things right. What I didn't have was a plan. That would come later, courtesy of an unexpected mentor and an opportunity that would change everything. Back at Yale, I threw myself into my studies with even more intensity. If I couldn't control my financial situation, at least I could excel academically. I signed up for the most challenging courses, volunteered for extra lab hours, and rarely slept more than 5 hours a night. It wasn't a healthy coping mechanism, but it kept my mind off the betrayal. In my advanced biochemistry class, Professor Sarah Wilson noticed my dedication and my exhaustion. "Mackenzie, could you stay after class for a moment?" she asked one day in February. I worried she was going to tell me to ease up. Instead, she offered me an opportunity. "I've been watching your work this semester," she said. "You have an exceptional mind, particularly for seeing connections others miss." I'm leading a research project on enzyme catalysis for targeted drug delivery, and I think you'd be a valuable addition to the team. It comes with a stipend. The stipend wasn't huge, $200 for the semester, but it was more than I was making at the dining hall with better hours. More importantly, it was a chance to do meaningful work in my field. I'd be honored, I told her. Thank you for considering me. Don't thank me, she replied with a small smile. This isn't charity. I need bright minds on this project. Working in Professor Wilson's lab changed everything. For the first time since discovering my parents' betrayal, I felt valued for my intelligence and work ethic. The graduate students treated me as an equal. Professor Wilson trusted me with increasingly complex tasks and always listened carefully to my ideas. One evening, as we were analyzing some particularly promising data, I found myself sharing my story with her. I hadn't planned to. It just came pouring out after she asked why someone as talented as me was working 3 jobs while trying to maintain a perfect GPA. To my surprise, she didn't offer pity. Instead, she offered perspective. That's a terrible betrayal, she acknowledged. But I have to ask, what are you going to do with it? Let it destroy you or use it as fuel. What do you mean? She gestured around the lab. Science is full of stories like yours. Marie Curie worked as a governess to fund her sister's medical education before she could pursue her own studies. Countless brilliant minds have overcome financial obstacles and family disapproval. The question is, what will your story be? Her words struck a chord. Up until then, I'd been reacting to my parents' betrayal, to my financial constraints, to the unfairness of it all. I hadn't been proactive in shaping my own future beyond trying to stay afloat. You're too focused on what was taken from you, Professor Wilson continued. Start thinking about what you can create instead. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind raced with a new perspective. Nathan's startup was likely to fail. I had done enough research to know that his idea wasn't unique and his technical knowledge was limited. But what if I could create something successful? Something that would not only secure my financial future, but prove to my parents that they had bet on the wrong child. The next day, I approached Professor Wilson with a question. The enzyme modification technique we've been developing, does it have commercial applications beyond the current research? She looked intrigued. Potentially, yes. Why do you ask? I've been thinking about the precision targeting system. If we could adapt it for cosmetic formulations, couldn't it revolutionize how active ingredients are delivered to specific layers of skin? Professor Wilson considered this. That's actually quite innovative. The beauty industry is always looking for the next breakthrough in delivery systems. Over the next few weeks, we explored this idea further. The technique we were developing for medical applications could, with modifications, be applied to skincare products to ensure active ingredients reached precisely the right depth of skin tissue for maximum effectiveness without degradation. Current products on the market had significant waste. Most active ingredients never reached their intended targets. You should consider patenting this application, Professor Wilson suggested. Yale has an Office of Cooperative Research that helps students and faculty commercialize innovations. I made an appointment with them the next day. The patent attorney I met with was cautiously optimistic. This is a novel application with significant market potential, he said after reviewing my preliminary research. The university would retain partial ownership, since the underlying research was conducted here. But as the innovator, you'd receive the majority of any licensing revenue. For the first time, I began to see a path forward that didn't involve crushing debt or years of financial struggle. But I needed more than just a patent. I needed business knowledge, connections, and resources. Yale, it turned out, had those too. The university's entrepreneurship center offered workshops, mentorship, and even seed funding for student ventures. I signed up for everything they offered, absorbing knowledge about business models, market analysis, and fundraising strategies. I met Jordan Chin, an MBA student who was impressed by my technical innovation and offered to help develop a business plan. We were joined by Liam Rodriguez, a chemistry graduate student from Professor Wilson's lab, who believed in the commercial potential of our modified enzyme delivery system. Together, we formed Precision Dermal Science, a startup focused on revolutionizing active ingredient delivery in skincare products. Our first product would be a serum utilizing our proprietary enzyme technology to deliver anti-aging compounds to the precise skin layer where they would be most effective. Professor Wilson introduced us to Dr. Elizabeth Barnes, a dermatologist on Yale's medical faculty who became our scientific advisor. Dr. Barnes was enthusiastic. The biggest challenge in dermatological products is getting the active ingredients where they need to go, she explained. If your system works as you've described, it could be game-changing. With Dr. Barnes's guidance, we refined our formulation and conducted small-scale laboratory tests. The results exceeded even our optimistic projections. Our delivery system was getting nearly 5 times more active ingredient to the target skin layer than leading commercial products. Meanwhile, I continued gathering evidence about my parents' misappropriation of my college fund. I learned that Nathan's digital apex had burned through nearly $50,000 in 6 months, with nothing to show for it but an incomplete website and some generic logo designs. My father had transferred another $30,000 to the business account in March. At this rate, my entire college fund would be gone before I finished sophomore year. I could have confronted them then, but something held me back. Maybe it was Professor Wilson's advice about focusing on creation rather than loss. Maybe it was the growing excitement I felt about precision dermal science. Or maybe I just wanted to wait until I had something concrete to show them, proof that they had made the wrong bet. In April, Yale's Entrepreneurship Center hosted its annual innovation competition. Jordan, Liam, and I entered Precision Dermal Science, competing against 30 other student ventures for a $25,000 prize and mentorship from successful alumni entrepreneurs. We worked tirelessly on our pitch, refining our presentation and preparing for every possible question. I channeled all my anger, determination, and need to prove myself into that presentation. This wasn't just about winning a competition. It was about validating my worth. The day of the competition, I stood before the judges, a panel of venture capitalists and successful entrepreneurs, and delivered the most important presentation of my life. I explained the science in accessible terms, demonstrated the market opportunity with compelling data, and outlined our roadmap to commercialization with confidence and clarity. When they announced Precision Dermal Science as the winner, I almost couldn't believe it. The judges cited the combination of genuine scientific innovation, clear market need, and our team's passionate expertise as the deciding factors. That night, as Jordan, Liam, and I celebrated our victory, my phone lit up with a text from Nathan. "Congrats on your science fair win. Meanwhile, Dad just invested another $20K in digital Apex. We're meeting with real investors next month." I smiled to myself. If only he knew that one of the science fair judges had already connected us with her venture capital firm for a potential seed investment discussion. If only he knew that Dr. Barnes had introduced us to 3 cosmetic companies interested in our technology. If only my parents knew that the child they had dismissed and defrauded was building something with far more potential than they could imagine. But they would know soon enough. I was no longer in a rush to confront them. Now I wanted to wait until I had something truly impressive to show for my efforts, something that would make their betrayal all the more foolish in retrospect. As Professor Wilson had suggested, I was using their betrayal as fuel, and that fuel was powering something extraordinary. Summer arrived, and with it, a decision. I had been offered a prestigious internship at a pharmaceutical company in San Francisco, the kind of opportunity most biochemistry students would kill for. But I also had precision dermal science, which needed my full attention. "Take the risk," Professor Wilson advised. "Internships come and go, but how often do you get a chance to build something that's truly yours?" I turned down the internship and instead applied for summer housing at Yale, using part of our competition winnings to cover the cost. Jordan, Liam, and I converted a small rented space near campus into our makeshift headquarters, complete with a basic laboratory setup for continued product development. The venture capital firm that had expressed interest after the competition came through with $150,000 in seed funding in exchange for a 10% equity stake. It was a fair deal that allowed us to maintain control while giving us the resources to accelerate our progress. We used the money strategically, filing our patent application, upgrading our lab equipment, commissioning formal clinical testing of our prototype, and hiring a part-time marketing consultant who specialized in beauty tech startups. I avoided going home that summer, telling my parents I had research opportunities that required me to stay at Yale. It wasn't exactly a lie. What I didn't tell them was that the research was for my own company, or that I was now living in an apartment with running water but no air conditioning because we were putting every available dollar into the business. Nathan came to visit me once, ostensibly to see the campus, but really to boast about Digital Apex's progress. "We're this close to launching the beta version," he told me over coffee. "Dad's connections have been incredible. He introduced us to some serious players in the Boston tech scene." "That's great," I said, genuinely curious. "How many users do you have signed up for the beta?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Well, we're still building the pre-launch list, but we've got a killer social media strategy ready to go. 0 users, no functional product, just lots of expensive plans and dwindling capital." I felt a twinge of sadness beneath my resentment. Nathan wasn't a bad person, just entitled and overconfident, and my parents had fed that entitlement at my expense. "What about you?" he asked, clearly ready to change the subject. "Still working in labs for extra credit." I smiled. Something like that. I didn't tell him about precision dermal science. I didn't mention the venture capital funding or the promising early clinical results or the 3 cosmetic companies that were now actively courting us for potential licensing deals. Let him, and through him, my parents, continue to underestimate me. The revelation would be all the sweeter. By August, we had reached a critical milestone. Our clinical testing showed that our delivery system outperformed all existing market solutions by a significant margin. We had scientific proof that our technology worked. Jordan leveraged this data to secure meetings with executives from leading skincare companies. In one particularly promising meeting, the R&D director of a major cosmetics conglomerate leaned forward after our presentation and said, "This is exactly what we've been looking for. How soon can we discuss licensing terms?" We were suddenly facing a pivotal decision: license our technology to established brands, or develop and market our own product line. Licensing means immediate revenue with minimal additional investment, Jordan argued. We could be profitable within months. But developing our own brand means controlling how the technology is used and marketed, Liam countered, and potentially much higher returns long term. I listened to both perspectives, weighing them carefully. Then I thought about what had driven me to this point. Not just the desire for financial success, but the need to create something meaningful that validated my worth. What if we do both? I suggested, license the technology for specific applications to generate immediate revenue, but reserve the rights to develop our own signature product line. It was an ambitious strategy that would require careful negotiation and ironclad contracts. But Jordan's business acumen and our growing network of advisors made it feasible. By September, when I returned for my sophomore year, Precision Dermal Science had secured its first licensing agreement with a premium skincare brand, providing us with a 6-figure upfront payment plus royalties on future sales. We were also in advanced discussions with 2 other companies interested in similar arrangements. The financial strain that had defined my freshman year was suddenly absent. I could afford to reduce my work hours and focus more on academics and the business. I moved to a better apartment off campus, one with actual air conditioning and enough space for a small home office. Meanwhile, I continued monitoring the Digital Apex situation from afar. Through casual conversations with Nathan and strategic questions to my parents, I learned that the beta launch had been delayed multiple times due to technical issues. The developer in India had delivered subpar code. The serious players from the Boston tech scene had declined to invest, and my parents had now funneled nearly $120,000, 4/5 of my college fund, into the failing venture. "It's just taking longer than expected," Mom insisted during one of our phone calls. "All startups face hurdles, but your father and I still believe in Nathan's vision." I bit my tongue, resisting the urge to point out that they had never shown such patient faith in my academic hurdles. As fall turned to winter, Precision Dermal Science continued its upward trajectory. Our patent application was proceeding smoothly. Our licensing revenues were exceeding projections, and we had begun development on our signature product, a revolutionary anti-aging serum that would showcase the full potential of our technology. Professor Wilson, who had become something of a mentor to me, remarked on the change she observed. "You're different this year," she said after lab one evening. "More confident, more focused." "I feel different," I admitted, "like I'm finally building something that can't be taken away from me." She nodded understandingly. "Success is the best revenge, they say, but I hope you find it's also its own reward, independent of whatever score you're settling with your family." Her words gave me pause. Was I building Precision Dermal Science for the right reasons? Was my motivation still primarily to prove my parents wrong? I reflected on this question during the following weeks. The truth was more complex than simple revenge. Yes, I wanted to show my parents the magnitude of their mistake, but I had also discovered a genuine passion for entrepreneurship, for seeing an idea transform into reality, for solving problems in innovative ways, for creating value where none existed before. Perhaps the greatest gift of my parents' betrayal was that it had pushed me to discover this part of myself sooner than I might have otherwise. By December, as I prepared to return home for Christmas break, Precision Dermal Science had achieved another milestone. Our first official product sample, packaged in elegant glass bottles with our logo embossed in silver. I packed one carefully in my suitcase, not yet sure if I would reveal it to my family, but wanting to be prepared if the moment felt right. The company was now valued at $2.1 million based on our latest investment round, in which we had raised an additional $300,000 for product development and marketing. My equity stake translated to a net worth of over $800,000 on paper, more than 5 times what my college fund had contained. All of this had happened in less than a year, while Nathan's digital apex had burned through most of my college money with nothing substantial to show for it. As my train approached Boston, I felt a strange mix of emotions: anger at my parents' betrayal, pride in what I had accomplished despite their lack of faith, sadness that our relationship had been damaged, perhaps irreparably, and a certain calm determination to finally bring everything into the open. The time for secrets was coming to an end. I was ready to confront my parents with both their betrayal and my success. I just needed to choose the perfect moment, one that would make the greatest impact and leave no room for them to diminish or dismiss what I had built. That moment would come sooner than I expected, catalyzed by Nathan's desperation and my parents' growing realization that they had backed the wrong venture. The first sign that something was wrong came when Dad picked me up from the train station in his old sedan, not the new SUV. "Had to downsize a bit," he explained vaguely. "Just being financially prudent." The house felt different, too. The new furniture was still there, but there was a tension in the air. Mom's smile seemed forced. Nathan was conspicuously absent. "Where's Nathan?" I asked as I unpacked. "Oh, he's meeting with some business associates," Mom said, her voice artificially bright. "He'll be home for dinner." Dinner was a subdued affair. Dad kept checking his phone. Mom made strange, small talk about neighbors and relatives. When Nathan finally arrived, his eyes were red-rimmed and his shoulders slumped in defeat. "How did the meeting go?" Dad asked immediately. Nathan threw himself into a chair. How do you think it went? Same as all the others. Interesting concept, but not differentiated enough from existing platforms. Come back when you have significant user traction. He mimicked a condescending voice. Mom reached over to pat his hand. They just don't see your vision, honey. No, Mom. They see it just fine, Nathan snapped. They just don't think it's worth anything. And at this point, neither do I. Dad's face darkened. We've invested too much to give up now. Invested? Nathan laughed bitterly. You mean wasted? $140,000 down the drain. The developer took off with half of it and delivered garbage code. The marketing agency charged us a fortune for social media posts that got zero engagement. And the so-called business advisor you hired, his great advice was to pivot to blockchain, whatever that means. I sat quietly, absorbing this confirmation of what I had suspected. Digital Apex had failed spectacularly, consuming nearly my entire college fund in the process. Maybe we should discuss this later, Mom suggested, glancing nervously in my direction. Why? Nathan demanded. Mackenzie knows we lost her college fund in a bad investment, right? That's what you told her. The room went very still. Dad cleared his throat. Nathan, that's enough. But Nathan, driven by his own disappointment and guilt, couldn't stop. She doesn't know it was for Digital Apex, that you took her Yale money and gave it to me. He looked at me, a mix of defiance and shame in his eyes. Well, now you know, Mac. They bet on the wrong kid. Mom burst into tears. Dad started yelling at Nathan for his lack of discretion. Nathan shouted back that he never wanted blood money to begin with. I remained calm, watching the chaos unfold. This wasn't how I'd planned the confrontation, but perhaps it was better this way, raw and unscripted, with the truth finally exposed through their own words. When the shouting died down, I spoke for the first time. I already knew. All three turned to stare at me. What do you mean you knew? Dad asked. I overheard you talking last Christmas about Digital Apex, about taking my college fund to invest in Nathan's real future. Well, I could take out loans like everyone else. My voice was steady, controlled. I found the bank statements showing the transfers from my college account to Digital Apex LLC. I heard you dismiss my education as just book smarts while praising Nathan's business acumen. Mom's face had gone pale. Mackenzie, we can explain. No need, I cut her off. I understand perfectly. You made a calculated decision to prioritize Nathan's venture over my education. You lied to my face about losing the money in an investment scam. You watched me scramble to piece together loans and work 3 jobs without an ounce of guilt. And now you're upset because your grand plan failed. Dad's expression hardened into defensiveness. We were trying to do what was best for both of you. Nathan's business had potential to what? Make millions. I interrupted. Based on what expertise? What market research? What unique value proposition? Or did you just assume that because Nathan is charismatic and male, he'd naturally succeed in business, while I should be grateful for student loans? That's not fair, Mom protested weakly. Not fair. I laughed. You want to talk about what's not fair? I reached for my bag and pulled out the elegant glass bottle containing our serum sample, placing it on the dinner table. What's that? Nathan asked. That, I said with quiet pride, is the first product from Precision Dermal Science. My company. There was a moment of confused silence. Your company? Dad repeated. Yes, the startup I co-founded last spring after winning Yale's innovation competition. We've developed a proprietary enzyme technology that revolutionizes how active ingredients are delivered in skincare products. We've secured 3 licensing deals with major cosmetic companies. We've raised $450,000 in venture capital, and as of our last valuation, the company is worth $2.1 million. Their stunned expressions would have been comical under different circumstances. That's amazing, Mackenzie. Mom stammered. Why didn't you tell us? Why would I? You made it clear that you didn't believe in my potential. You literally stole my future to invest in Nathan's. Why would I share my success with people who betrayed me so completely? Nathan was examining the bottle with newfound respect. This is legit. You actually built a real company. More real than Digital Apex ever was, I confirmed. We have paying customers, functioning products, and a sustainable business model. Dad's expression had shifted from shock to calculation. I could practically see the gears turning as he reassessed my value to the family. Well, this is wonderful news, he said, attempting to sound proud and supportive. I always knew you had entrepreneurial potential, Mackenzie. You get that from me. You know, we should discuss how to leverage the family's business connections to help you expand. The audacity was breathtaking. I couldn't help but laugh. Let me be perfectly clear, I said, looking him directly in the eyes. You will have nothing to do with precision dermal science. You will not profit from it. You will not advise on it. You will not claim credit for it. What you will do, however, is repay every penny of my college fund. Dad's facade of supportive interest vanished. Now, wait just a minute. That money was legally in your name. Yes, I finished for him, and I'm well aware of the legal situation. I've consulted with attorneys about it extensively, and while I may not have a strong legal case for fraud, I have more than enough for a compelling story. Imagine how it would look. Successful parents steal their daughter's college fund for their son's failed startup, force her into student debt, lie about it, then try to claim credit when she succeeds anyway. Mom gasped. You wouldn't publicly humiliate us like that. Why not? You had no problem privately humiliating me, but I'm willing to be reasonable. Repay my college fund, the full $150,000, and I'll consider the matter closed between us. That's blackmail. Dad sputtered. No, that's consequences, I corrected him, and it's a generous offer considering what you did. Nathan, to my surprise, spoke up in my defense. She's right, Dad. We owe her the money. I've been telling you that all along. He turned to me. I'm sorry, Mac. I didn't know they lied to you about where the money went. I thought you agreed to it. I wasn't ready to absolve Nathan entirely, but I appreciated his acknowledgement of the wrong done to me. We don't have that kind of money available right now, Dad admitted grudgingly. Most of our liquid assets went into Digital Apex. I'm aware of that too, I replied. That's why I've prepared a repayment agreement. I pulled a document from my bag and slid it across the table. 5 years with reasonable interest. Monthly payments that won't bankrupt you, but will ensure I'm made whole. Dad glanced at the terms, his face darkening. And if we refuse? Then I share my story with everyone. Your colleagues, your friends, your golf buddies, Mom's book club, the extended family. I have recordings, bank statements, emails, all documenting exactly what you did and how you justified it. I'm sure Grandma would be particularly interested to hear how you gambled away her granddaughter's future. The mention of his mother-in-law, who had always emphasized the importance of education and fair treatment of children, made Dad flinch visibly. A tense silence filled the room. Finally, Dad reached for a pen. We'll need to review this with our attorney, he said stiffly as he signed the document. Of course, I agreed. I'll give you the contact information for mine. After they signed, Mom attempted reconciliation. Mackenzie, I hope someday you can forgive us. We truly thought we were making the best decision for the family. No, I corrected her gently. You made the best decision for Nathan at my expense, and you've been doing that our entire lives. The difference is that this time, I refused to be the sacrifice. That night, as I lay in my childhood bedroom for what I suspected might be the last time, I felt an unexpected sense of peace. The confrontation hadn't gone as planned, but perhaps it had gone as needed. The truth was out. Accountability had been established, and I had stood up for myself in a way I never had before. The next morning, I received an email from Yale's financial aid office. Someone had anonymously donated a scholarship specifically for female students in biochemistry with entrepreneurial aspirations. The scholarship would cover my remaining tuition and fees for the next 2.5 years. I never confirmed it, but I strongly suspected Nathan was behind it. His attempt at making amends using whatever personal savings he had managed to accumulate. It didn't erase the betrayal, but it suggested that perhaps there was hope for him to grow beyond the entitled person our parents had raised him to be. As for Mom and Dad, they did comply with the repayment agreement, though our relationship remained distant and formal. Some betrayals are too fundamental to simply forgive and forget. But with time, we established a new kind of relationship, one based on clear boundaries and mutual respect, rather than blind trust and unmet expectations. And precision dermal science? It continued to thrive beyond my wildest expectations, eventually attracting the attention of a major beauty conglomerate that acquired the company for $28 million 3 years after its founding. My share of the proceeds was enough to pay off my student loans, buy a comfortable home in Cambridge, and establish a foundation providing scholarships for students whose families had failed to support their educational dreams. The painful betrayal that had once threatened to derail my future had instead launched me on a path to greater success than I could have imagined. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us become the catalysts for our greatest achievements. 3 years after that fateful Christmas confrontation, I stood on Yale's campus in my graduation cap and gown, diploma in hand. The journey to this moment had been anything but traditional, yet somehow all the more meaningful for its challenges. Precision dermal science had been acquired 6 months earlier by one of the world's largest beauty conglomerates for $28 million. The technology we developed was now being integrated into a full line of premium skincare products with our names credited as the inventors. The company had kept us on as consultants during the transition, allowing me to complete my degree while still participating in the exciting evolution of our innovation. As I scanned the crowd of proud families, I spotted a familiar face. Nathan, now 22 and much changed from the entitled boy he'd once been, was making his way toward me. "Congratulations, Mac," he said, offering a tentative hug. I wouldn't have missed it. Our relationship had undergone a slow but significant transformation. After Digital Apex's failure and my confrontation with our parents, Nathan had been forced to reckon with his own role in the betrayal. He'd started community college, found a job at a local tech company, and gradually developed a more realistic understanding of what success actually required. "Thanks for coming," I replied, genuinely glad to see him. "Are Mom and Dad here, too?" He shook his head. "They said to send their congratulations. Dad's got a golf tournament, and Mom's, well, you know." I nodded, unsurprised. My parents had fulfilled their financial obligation. The college fund had been fully repaid according to our agreement. But emotional reconciliation remained elusive. They found it difficult to relate to me now that the power dynamic had shifted so dramatically. The daughter they had dismissed as merely book-smart was now financially independent and professionally respected in ways they struggled to comprehend. "It's okay," I assured him. "I'm just glad you're here." Later, at a small celebration dinner with Jordan, Liam, Professor Wilson, and a few close friends, Nathan raised his glass in a toast. "To my sister," he said, "who taught me the hardest and most important lesson of my life, that real success comes from genuine effort, not entitlement or shortcuts." I felt a surge of emotion at his words. The journey had changed both of us, me into someone more confident and resilient, him into someone more humble and thoughtful. After graduation, I used part of my windfall from the company acquisition to establish the Second Chance Scholarship Foundation, providing financial support to students whose family resources had been withdrawn or never existed. The foundation's mission statement included a phrase that had become something of a personal mantra: Sometimes our greatest setbacks become the foundation for our most meaningful successes. My parents and I eventually developed a more functional, if somewhat distant, relationship. The annual family gatherings were no longer marred by tension and secrets, though there remained an unspoken acknowledgement that some trust, once broken, could never be fully restored. Dad occasionally attempted to take credit for my entrepreneurial spirit. She gets that business sense from me when introducing me to his friends. I learned to smile politely and change the subject rather than correct him publicly. His need for validation said more about him than it did about me. Mom made more genuine efforts at reconnection, sending thoughtful cards and occasionally calling just to check in. During one such call, she finally offered the straightforward apology I had long hoped for. "We were wrong, Mackenzie," she said simply. "We thought we knew what was best, but we were blinded by our own biases and expectations. I'm sorry we didn't believe in you the way we should have." "Thank you for saying that," I replied, feeling a weight lift that I hadn't realized I was still carrying. "That means a lot to me." Nathan, meanwhile, had discovered his own path. He completed an associate's degree in computer science and found that he had a genuine talent for user experience design. He was now working for a successful app development company and taking night classes to complete his bachelor's degree. We spoke regularly, and I had even invested in a small side project he was developing, not out of obligation, but because I genuinely saw its potential. Professor Wilson had become a true mentor and friend. She often invited me back to Yale to speak to her students about the intersection of science and entrepreneurship. During one such visit, she shared an observation that perfectly captured my journey. "You know what makes your story so powerful?" she asked as we walked across the campus I once thought would be my undoing. "It's not just that you overcame adversity. It's that you refused to let that adversity define you or limit what you believed was possible." Her words resonated deeply. The betrayal had initially felt like the end of my dreams. Instead, it had become the catalyst for dreams I hadn't even known to imagine. The financial security from the company acquisition gave me freedom, but it was the confidence gained through building something successful from nothing that truly transformed me. I no longer feared losing resources or support because I knew I could create them for myself. As I look back now, I realize that my parents' betrayal, painful as it was, contained an unexpected gift. Had they supported me as promised, I might have followed a more conventional path: a Yale degree, a prestigious job, gradual career advancement. Their actions forced me to discover my own capacity for innovation and resilience much earlier than I might have otherwise. That's not to excuse what they did. The breach of trust was real and deeply harmful. But I've learned that moving forward doesn't require pretending the past didn't happen. It requires extracting the lessons and leaving behind the bitterness. If you're facing a similar betrayal, whether from family, friends, or colleagues, remember this: their actions revealed their limitations, not yours. The people who should have believed in you may fail you, but that doesn't determine what you're capable of achieving. Sometimes the very people who should support you become the obstacles you must overcome to reach your full potential. The ultimate victory isn't just proving them wrong, though I admit that part is satisfying. The ultimate victory is creating a life so aligned with your authentic talents and values that their approval becomes irrelevant. Have you ever had someone underestimate you or betray your trust only to find that it pushed you toward greater success? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life lessons, and share with someone who might need to hear that setbacks can become springboards. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the best beginnings.